Pittsburgh Steelers did their part in defeating the Baltimore Ravens 17-10, giving themselves the best opportunity to make the postseason, but their playoff fate has yet to be decided. It will come down to two games: the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans, and the Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins. Luckily for the Steelers, they only need one of these games to go their way. Both certainly helps, but to make the dance, all they need is one. The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans will kick off this afternoon, and the big news here is that Trevor Lawrence is questionable and a true game time decision with a shoulder and a finger injury. Now, reports say that Lawrence is pushing to play, and obviously he's going to try everything he possibly can to be on the field in a playoff deciding game. This is not, oh, well, Jacksonville can still make the postseason. If they win, they're in. If they lose, the Steelers are in. Jacksonville is out. And everybody keeps asking, why? How? Isn't there a playoff tie? Well, that would come down to a three-way tie between them, the Denver Broncos, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Steelers have the AFC record over Jacksonville. That gives them the upper hand and the tiebreaker. They head to the postseason. Jacksonville does not. Lawrence will be a game time decision. We'll see what happens there. If he does not play, it will be CJ Beathard starting for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I mean, you could look at this and say that's a backup quarterback, but he does what backup quarterbacks do, and that's not turn the ball over. He's missed, I believe, 13 passes this season, something like 47 for 60 in that ballpark. It's not for a ton of yards. It's not for a ton of touchdowns, but he doesn't lose games for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Meanwhile, the Tennessee Titans, Mike Vrabel's future is on the line. You don't know what's going to happen there. He gave a very passionate speech about nobody likes losing. Losing sucks. I'm not trying to lose anymore. Well, maybe that fire is there in week 18 and they could upset the Jacksonville Jaguars with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback and send the Pittsburgh Steelers to the postseason. If that does not go their way, the Steelers will turn their attention to Buffalo at Miami in prime time. The NFL planned this one out perfectly to make sure that everybody is glued to their televisions all day long on Sunday. This game decides not just the AFC East, but whether or not the Buffalo Bills are in the playoffs. Again, if the Pittsburgh Steelers make it and Buffalo loses, Buffalo's out. As for Miami loses, they go from a 2 seed to a 6 seed, and, well, they still make the playoffs, but things don't look good. Now, to backtrack a little bit, because I did make a mistake there. If Jacksonville does lose, it makes the playoff standings difficult. Buffalo could still get in, but just saying, let's say Jacksonville wins, Buffalo wins. That's how the AFC will shape out. The big news here, injury-wise, is Jalen Waddle, who's dealing with an ankle injury, and Raheem Mostert, who's dealing with a knee and an ankle injury, are both questionable. Neither are expected to play for the Miami Dolphins. That's a major loss. Now, to be in Miami is pretty big. I also think that getting smoked by the Baltimore Ravens last week actually helps the Miami Dolphins because their back is up against the wall. People are starting to doubt them. This is a do or die game almost. Hey, look it. Are we going to go into the playoffs and actually win some games? Are we going to be a threat? Or is the narrative that we cannot beat good teams actually true and maybe we're not that good? Who knows? The Steelers' playoff fate will be decided by the end of Sunday. Their schedule will likely be announced shortly after the 8 o'clock game. We'll see what happens from there. As for the Steelers, and if they do make the playoffs and if they do make the postseason, everybody's got questions. Well, it's Mason Rudolph, right? Yes, it's Mason Rudolph. The Steelers are not going to go back to Kenny Pickett at this point, maybe next season, but I think that's a whole other story. And right now the reports saying, oh, well, they still believe in him. I don't think any of that has anything to do with this week. And honestly, the future of the Steelers quarterback position probably isn't even a thought for them right now. It's just not. They're worried about making the postseason. Mason Rudolph will be their starting quarterback until the end of the year. That's where they're at. Comes down to 2 games. We'll see what happens.